I'll be going through the solution of the homework today, but I will not go through the writers and those issues or the problem or task, whatever you'd like to call it, because we have the deadline of that task is slightly extended, as you remember. So the deadline of that task is tomorrow 10 a.m. But since the deadline of the homework has passed, we can take a look at the solution of the homework. So I think this was the set of the numbers, right? So so let's start with the problem definition. Okay, so let's see what's going on here. So we have an array of numbers. What we need to do is we need to filter out all numbers that are less than 40. So we're interested only in numbers that are greater than 40. Okay, then what we need to do is we need to console log the resulting array. Next, what we do is we raise all the remaining numbers. And by saying the remaining numbers, I mean when we filter out all these numbers which are less than 40, less than or equal 40, we have a new array of these new numbers which are bigger than 40, greater than 40. So these are the remaining numbers. We raise them to the power of 2. Okay, and then we console log that array. When I say console log that array, that should have been a hint that you would be putting these arrays in new variables, right? So that way you'll be able to console log that. And on the third step, what we would need to do is we would need to use the reduce method on that new filtered and squared array, so that the array from the second step, right? As you can see here, I say squared number 1, index of squared number 1. So that basically means we're operating on the array, which is the result of the second step. Okay. Seems pretty straightforward enough. Then what we have next, okay, let me check if the recording is going, yeah. Okay. So then I had a small example, of course. The example is kind of different from the original array because then we would have a solution and then I would solve the thing for you. But what I have here is I have a smaller amount of numbers. Then I kind of verbally, this is the algorithm, right? This is how I would solve the issue. I don't have any code here, but this is the algorithm. So we have some set of numbers. Then after the filter, as we need to get all the numbers that are greater than 40, we will get 45, 55, 66, as you can see. Then we raise all these numbers to squares. Of course, in this case, I have kind of sorted accidentally all these numbers 45, 56, 55, and 66 in ascending order. This is just an accident, okay? So doesn't mean you have to sort the array, but there was some confusion there maybe. Then we raise all these numbers to the power of 2. And the resulting object would be the values of this array as keys and their indexes as values. So it just sounds okay. So why don't we go ahead and maybe kind of try to implement. So for the step 1 and step 2, we need to console log the array, and of course we would need to also console log the resulting objects to just see that we have the thing. So so I have my random numbers. Did you have a question?
Yes, çoğu haskatı nade objectները պետք է sort անենք դրա վրա շատ տանջվեցի. So I understand like the 4 point that I see 0, 1, 2 like in ascending order the values of like the object, and I decided that I need to sort the object's values as well, like.
But okay. First of all, if I would require something like that from you, I would explicitly state that in the problem itself. I would not let you to guess, should I sort it or should I not? Okay, so for the future, whatever is not explicitly mentioned in the problem statement, consider you don't need that. Okay, so if I did not say on this step, on the third step, use the reduce array and use a map method, or use the reduce array method and use a map method and use a for method. If I don't say and then use these, then you don't need to use them. Okay, so you just take the problem statement, try to solve the issue. In case I'm a human, in case I make a mistake and you should have been using map for whatever, just solve the problem that way. Say it was impossible to solve with the problem statement you gave me, so I solved it this way. And if there is a mistake, I'll correct and I'll say I made a mistake. But generally, if you have a problem statement, try not to exceed or do some kind of key sorting or etc. So the problem statement, I thought the problem statement was clear enough, but sorry that I caused some confusion there. Anyways, I'm sorry to finish. As I explained on the last session, you cannot kind of sort the keys of the objects, because as we see the example, if there are numeric keys in the object and there are textual strings, textual keys in the object, the numeric ones will be sorted by the engine. You don't have control there, okay? The numeric ones will be sorted, we've seen that yesterday. However, the textual ones will be sorted by the creation order, okay? So not by any kind of order. So you don't have much control. If you'd like to have any kind of sorting, you would have to go with arrays, okay?
Okay.
Was there a question?
Yeah. About the first part of the task.
Okay.
You wrote that if you want to, you can sort it below the task. Is it okay to sort it?
So one of the colleagues was asking, should I sort? I think it was Christina. She was asking, should I sort or should I not? I said, if you feel brave, you can sort. But for the rest of you, that doesn't mean that you have to sort. It was her question. I said, you should not, it's not part of the kind of problem to sort it. If you feel brave, go ahead and sort. That doesn't mean that every one of you has to do it. Any other questions regarding the homework? So it's quite interesting because you are QA engineers and you approach the problem from that perspective, and then you kind of try to find bugs in the problem statement. Should I use this? Should I use that? No, just use whatever is in the text. If there is an error in the problem statement, I will recognize that. Tell me it is impossible to solve the problem with the problem statement. We would have to use the for loop, whatever it is. I cannot solve that with a reduce. Then I will show that you can solve it with a reduce without a map or for or whatever. If I cannot solve that, I'll recognize that and we'll change the problem statement. But for the future, just stick to the problem statement, okay? If it doesn't say sort, do not sort. Even if in the example something is sorted, consider that as an accident. So yes, Christina, go ahead.
Arsenjan, just a question about the individual results, the stock bits, when we will register into it. Is it possible to, at the end of lesson, to show how to make the individual files? Honestly, I don't understand how to create my own one. Should I somehow clone something again as I have done with the Git, or this is something else?
So, okay, so I suggest you to look up such things in Google, okay? I'm not a StackBlitz or JSFiddle master user. So for these kind of questions, you have Google, you have ChatGPT, you have YouTube videos, you have articles, whatever tutorials there are. So all these questions, how do I create a file in StackBlitz, JSFiddle? You can ask your colleagues who use JSFiddle. Some of you just use StackBlitz, some of you use JSFiddle. So ask your colleagues such questions, ask Google, whatever it is. I'm not really familiar with this. I just know that they exist and you can write some JavaScript and TypeScript code there. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yep.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, okay, so let's get with the solution because we are already starting to waste some time here. So okay, we have our numbers. Now the first point of the task was filter the array and get and only have the values which are greater than 40. Okay, so let's go with that. Filtered array, okay, or filtered numbers. Okay, so what method should I use? We have them in the screenshot, right? Dot filter, dot map, dot reduce. Okay, so fair enough. So I'll go with the filter, of course, function, and I'll have the number, okay, because the argument of this function, the first argument of this function will be the each individual elements of the array. In this case, all the elements are numbers, so I'll have numbers. That's why I named this variable as number to have some semantics here. So yeah, I could say X or a character, but this does not represent the character, so it represents a number. That's why I like to name my variables semantically.
Quick question. Like,
Yes.
I have watched YouTube videos, and in some videos I see that function was like if filter, like it is callback function here that we are using. It was like declared in the bottom with the name, and the name was used in the like filter parentheses. Is it correct way? Like, is it good practice to use like this? Or
That is correct. Okay, so what was I going to do? Filter, yeah, okay, so now the way filter works, when for that individual element of the array, when you return true, it will be preserved in an array. You return false, it will be dropped. So for each number which is greater than 40, I need to return true. Now, if the number is greater than 40, it is preserved. If the number is less than 40 or equal to 40, it will be dropped. So let's console log this thing and see what we have there. As we can see, all the numbers are less than or equal to 40 are dropped, and the numbers are not sorted by any particular fashion. So this was the step 1. Now we need to go for step 2. Or let's just do this way. Okay, now 1, 2. Okay, so what was the second one? We need to raise the remaining numbers to the power of 2. Fair enough. Powered numbers. Okay, numbers. Now, of course, I need to. I did not kind of explicitly mention that you should be raising the numbers. Of course, I use the remaining numbers, which caused some confusion, but I hope that your intuition tells you that on the second step, we should be operating on the result of the first step, and on the third step, we should be operating on the result of the second step. I hoped it was intuitive, but it was apparently not. So what you should have done here, you should have just taken the filtered numbers and did some math. And we also have a number here. And what we need to do, we simply need to raise the number into the power of 2. We learned 2 ways to do that: the shorter syntax, which comes from Ruby, or the math.pow function, which receives the number as the first argument and the power on the second argument. And if we go ahead and console log this thing, we would get the powered numbers, which is again correct. Now let's go to the third step, which apparently is the slightly challenging one. Now we need to use the reduce array method to construct from this array. We need to construct an object where the key of the object is the squared number, and the value of that key in that object is its index. So let's go for a number index object. Okay, so I'll be operating on the result of the second step. So I'll be grabbing this powered numbers array, then I'll do reduce, and it receives a function, and then it receives the accumulator. The first argument is the accumulator, which is this object that will be gradually building. The second argument is our number. And the third argument, as you can see, our editor is helping out us here, is the index. We also need to have the index somehow. And the third argument of the reduce function, of the callback function of the reduce, is the index. So I'll also grab index because we need that. Now, my starting object, my starting value of the reduce. So the way reduce works, you give it a function, you give it two arguments. Okay, let's do it this way. You give it two arguments, a callback function and an initial value. So this is the way reduce works. So if you would like to transform your array into a number, usually your initial value is a number, whatever number it is, you decide based on the task. If your resulting data structure is an array, your initial value is usually an empty array or whatever array it is. If it's a string, if the result of the reduce should be a string, your initial value is usually a string. Okay. So in our case, since the resulting thing is an object, that's why my starting value is also an object. So let's solve this problem two ways, okay? So the first one will be modifying the accumulator object itself. So, the problem, what was the problem statement again? So we need to grab the number, the current squared number, and we also need its index. And then the key is that number itself, and the value of that key in the object is its index. Fair enough. So our accumulator is the object. It is kind of the resulting object. Now the number is the key and the index is the value. That's it. And then you return your accumulator. Problem solved. So it was just this, right? So once you spell out the problem verbally, or you write it down, or you have an algorithm, it is just as simple as this. As I said, we need to put the number as the key and the index as the value. We need to put the number as the key and the value and the index as a value. So nothing kind of complicated.
Quick question.
Yes.
Can we Konstantin her takan something?
Just-
As index is wrong.
Just you can sort before powered numbers.
Okay, so let's touch this topic for the third time. Okay, so in objects, you cannot sort the keys. Let's see the array, okay? We have 2500, 3536, 1849, 2304. Are these numbers sorted by any order? Ascending or descending? No, they are not. And let me do something else, okay? I'll console log the current number so that you see that the numbers that we get in the reduce are also in the same order that we see here. Current number. So as you can see, in the callback of the reduce, we receive all the numbers, all the elements of the array in this absolutely same order that we have here, right? So we go for the 2500 first, then 2536 second, 1849 next, and 2304 as the last element. So this is the order which we have our elements in the array, right? So, and in that specific order, and in that exact order, we are adding our keys into the object. But as I already explained, if your keys in the object are numbers, they will be automatically sorted, the keys, not the values. Now, as you can see in the object, your keys are sorted in descending order. You have not control over this. Now, if you would like to sort the keys in the order of actual value, so you would like to have this value 0 on the first, as the first key in the object, you would have to somehow manipulate the keys, not the values. Okay.
And in this case, if you sort it on the first step, it will be the way they want. Because when you sort, it's coming with a small number from as the first one. I have sorted, it is that way. So if they want very much, they can do it on the first step. So.
Okay, because we're not talking about sorting the elements in.
Sorry.
We're not talking about sorting the elements in an array. Okay, so the question was about sorting the values, right, in the object. So what the question was about, how do we do so that the very first key in this object is the one with the value 0, the second key is the one with the value 1, and the third one is the key with the value of 2, and the last one is the key with the value of 3. So what I was saying, to do that, you would have to manipulate your keys. And in this case, however, in this case, since our keys are numbers, and as I explained yesterday, if the keys in your objects are numbers, they will be sorted, the keys, automatically by the JavaScript engine in the ascending order, and you have no control over this. To have your actual values sorted in your object, you would have to manipulate your keys in a way to kind of trick the engine to put that key on the first place so that the value of that key is 0, right? So you would have to somehow manipulate your keys.
May I ask a question about the function?
Just give me a sec, please. And as you can see, I've just done that, okay? So what I did, I simply converted our keys from strictly numbers to string. Now, this key underscore number is a string number. It's not, the key itself is not a number, but it's a string. So as you can see, now as we get our values by the same order we have in the array, and the index, of course, starts from 0. Now, as you can see, we have our values. The first key is with the value 0. The second key is with the value 1 and 2 and 3. So we have to kind of trick the engine, right? So, but this is not something you usually do. If you would like to do that, this is how you do that. Okay. If you just say number, you don't have any control. The engine itself decides how to sort that.
Okay.
Was there any other questions?
Yeah.
So we're getting lots of questions regarding the homework. Let's go.
The function can have 4 arguments. 2 of them are optional. Is it strictly to use optional arguments in the order they are shown to use in function?
Are you talking about the arguments in this in the callback function of the reduce? And what was the question again?
Because you have taken something
Inside
need to
reduce. This function inside reduce can have 2 optional arguments.
Okay.
If we want to use, for example, the second optional argument,
And which are these optional arguments?
array,
So the last one, the
the
fourth.
last one,
Okay.
we are obligatory to use before it.
Yes. So it's very similar to what I was showing regarding the array destructuring yesterday. If you do not care about the index here, but you would like to get the array, you would have to somehow skip it, okay? But in this case, in the case of functions, in the case of array destructuring, you could just put the comma to kind of skip that argument. Here, you cannot do that. You will have to still put some kind of variable here and you wouldn't use the value of that variable. Usually the way we do, if we do not care about the variable, we kind of need to skip it. We just use the underscore. This is a valid variable name in JavaScript. So in that way, we just grab array and we do, for example, a console log of an array here. So that would also work. So the order of the arguments or function parameters is very important in JavaScript. I will show you a way how to kind of trick that, how to kind of circumvent that limitation with objects. But since we did not get to functions yet, I'm not going to go into much details.
Just a quick question.
Yes, sure, I love questions.
Can we grab like index like by another way? For example, by index of method without like putting each parameter in the function.
Why would you do that?
Just like
You
I
can-
was trying.
You
to
can
do that.
solve, okay, so usually there are more than 2 ways to solve any issues. Okay, not only in mathematics, not only in programming, but usually there are very few kind of problems that have only one way to solve. So in this case, you can solve the issue in infinite ways. One of the options would be in your reduce function to somehow do index of, find the index, but that's unnecessary work because it simply gives you an index. So then you are doing some more computational work, wasting your computer's resources to find an index, which you already have. So that doesn't make sense.
Okay.
You can do that, of course, but it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
Okay, so this was the first thing that I was trying to show you. Now, the second option, which I've seen only one of our colleagues has done as a solution, and I actually like that a lot, is the following. I did not kind of explain this syntax, but that was a nice touch that our colleague did solve the task that way. So what we can do here, we can just return, and instead of modifying our accumulator and returning that accumulator, we can simply return a new object, and that's still valid. So I'll just go ahead and write the code here, and then I'll explain it. Okay, so what we can do here, we can just spread all the values from our accumulator, and then we can use the computed key syntax that we discussed for the objects, and then we can say, give me all the numbers, grab all the values from the accumulator, put them in this new object, right? And then at the end, create a new key where the key is the number that comes from the problem statement and the value is the index. Still problem solved. So this is another syntax. I like this syntax a lot. I usually would do this in my reduces. I wouldn't kind of modify the accumulator itself. Even with the arrays, I wouldn't just push a new value in the array. I would create a new array. That's just the style I do things. However, I just wanted to show that this would be the second kind of way to do this. And this is again, the spread operator. And what this basically does, it just grabs all the values, all the current values from the accumulator object, and it puts them in this new object. Okay, so if I would just do this, right, this would be kind of a clone of the accumulator object. So it creates a new object with all key values of the accumulator, which is basically a clone of the accumulator. Okay.
Just, sorry, yeah, there is one question. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, in this case, though, we return not the, I mean, the final result is not the accumulator, but the newly created object, right?
Yes, however, that's the accumulator.
Yeah.
That's still the accumulator. Because you are, in this new object, you are accumulating your previous values. So that's the accumulation process.
Okay.
So the ACC, let's console log ACC and see what it is. Console.log ACC. So ACC, before I save it, the way it works is if you provide this initial value, the initial value of SCC is this. if you do not provide an initial value for the ACC,
Zero.
the initial value for the accumulator or this variable called SEC is the first element of the array. But since our first element of the array is a number and we're trying to create an object, hence I would have to provide an initial value because number is not an object and we're trying to get an object. So the accumulator, okay, let's see what it logs. The accumulator, as you can see, for the first iteration, it's the empty object. If I would say an empty array, it would be an empty array, okay? Okay, so it's empty array. For the second iteration, it's, okay, so the way it works, let's go iteration by iteration to understand how this works. So first iteration, imagine accumulator is empty array, sorry, it's an empty array. Now what we do here, we spread this empty object here, then what we get is nothing because empty object doesn't have any keys. And for the first iteration, our key is 2500 and the index is 0. So this is what we will get from the first iteration. As you can see, in the beginning of second iteration, when we do the console log, that's actually exactly what we did. Now, let's imagine this is our accumulator. This is iteration 2, and our accumulator equals to this. Now we do the spread of this object, right? So what that means, we would simply then have this. And now we do the number dot and column index, right? So in this case, our number is 31, 36, and our index is 1. So at the end of the second iteration, our accumulator is this. As you can see, on the beginning of third iteration or at the end of the second iteration, that's exactly what we get. So now our accumulator for the last step, for the fourth kind of iteration. Now it is this. So what we, no, sorry, for the third one, So it is this, we do the spread, and we have our number, and we have our index. Do you see how this works? Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So we're just doing this step by step, all the iterations. So when we spread this, we will get these keys in our object, like this. Now the number is 1849, okay? 1849, the index is 2. Cool, so that's the third iteration, and for the last element, this is our accumulator. Now we do the spread. Now we do the spread. Correct. And thanks to this spread operator, we are one by one kind of adding new keys to our object. And then we have number, we have index. What's the number here? What is the number? It's last iteration.
2304.
2304. And what is the index?
3.
3, correct. So the spread operator results in the following. And now we have our keys, our 1849, 2500, 3136, and then at last we have 2304. Is this the same what we have in the console log?
Yeah.
If it's
Just...
and it sees and reduces, it's the last step, last iteration, last element. It just returns everything that you have in your accumulator as the result, puts it into the number index object variable, and this is exactly what we have in the console log. So for the very last step, this is what we return. That's the accumulator, and what we have in the accumulator on the very last step, that's what we get as the result of the operation. Any questions?
Yeah.
And of course, as you can see here, now this is what the actual object would look like. This is how we construct the object. But again, since the keys are numbers, our engine is doing the sorting of the keys for us. So that's why we get the keys ordered here. Pardon?
for the, like those three are strings.
Well, technically, there are numbers.
Can I ask-
All the keys will have to be strings in JavaScript,
Mhm.
except in case your key is a symbol. We just ignore that,
Mhm.
but in this case, there are numbers, so it knows there are numbers. Yes, please go ahead, the question.
My question was about the first solution that we have, ACC number equal index. I understand that it's returning the same thing as we have here, but just to understand that equal sign ACC number, it's each time returning the key in this case, right? The number that is in power 2.
I'm not sure I understand the question, sorry.
The first solution, I want to understand the account ACC and brackets number, what it is returning each time and why it is equal to index. Because we should get the powered numbers. Sorry?
Because that's the problem, okay. Let's do this again from the beginning. For the first solution. Console.log of the accumulator accumulator. Okay. And let's maybe have another console log. The accumulator is about, okay, return accumulator. Let's put it this way. So you have the before and after comparison. Now, what the problem statement says, it says, give me an object where the keys of these objects are your numbers and the values of your keys in that object is the indices of these numbers. So what this line, the line 31 means, it literally says, create a key in our accumulator object, and the key is our number. Comes from the problem statement. The key should be the number. And the equal means put the value of this index, which is the index of that number in the powered numbers array. It starts from 0 and goes up until to the last index in our array. It says, then put the index of the number
as value.
as a value.
Okay, I see.
Of that key. So it literally does that.
Okay.
So let's do this. Okay, so let me save this.
I just didn't understood first why it is equal. Seems it's giving a new value to accumulator number. That was
That's one of the ways to set the value in
Yeah,
an object.
yeah.
So if I have an object, for example, I'm going to remove all these. Const object. Hello. Hello. Hello there. Now I want to override the value of this key hello. How do I do that? I write object dot hello. Hello. Since our key is static, I can do that. We don't have any dynamic part. I can say delete, right? Then I console log my object.
It will
And
print.
I'll also console.log my object here, just so we see the difference. As you can see, the original object is hello there. We modified the key hello, and now the new value is delete, and then we get the object hello delete. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I remember it's the same way working in JSON when returning and yeah, okay, thank you.
Awesome.
Got it.
Any other questions while we're taking a look at the homework? No questions. Awesome. Is there anything I can do to kind of explain how Reduce works, what it does, any other examples? Should I also show how to sum numbers together? Should I explain something like that? Does that?
It's clear.
Is it clear?
For me, yes. Could you give us more problems with Reduce?
Surely. Surely. However, I had a plan today, but we busted the plan. I was not planning to spend 45 minutes on all this, but I think it's valuable because I hope now we understand how Reduce works.
But reduce the object of that has come again. Object hit.
Let's do this way. Let's have 10 minutes of break right now. Then we'll solve a task, and then I'll maybe talk some about some other topics.
Okay.
Okay. So what we have here, we have an array of students. Okay. Each object in an array has student name, which is the name of the student. We have a grade, which is the, let me actually rename this to score. Yeah, sorry about that. It might be confusing. Score. Each of them has a score. So their teachers give them some homework and they have some grades. So each student has a score. What the score means, that doesn't matter. It's a number from 1 to 10. And then, of course, each student is in a specific class, again, from 1 to 10. So we have also that. Now, as you can see, some of the students are in the same class, right? So we have Lily and we have Arpine. Both of them are in the ninth class. But both of them have different scores. So what our task is to create an object from this. There you go, your request. There goes your request. To create an object from this, and the keys of the objects will be, now this is a pseudocode, okay? Do not copy paste it. It's just a pseudocode for you to understand the problem statement. Now each key of the object will be the class, and in the end, what I would like to receive is the average score in the class. Okay. So let me just give you an example of what I'm looking for here. So it will look something like this. You have an object. So one will be first class. And then you will go through all the objects in this array and see if the student is from class 1. They are. So we have one student there. We have another one there. And I don't see anyone from the first class. So we have 2 students and their scores are 3 and 5. So it will be 3 plus 5 divided by 2. That's the definition of average. Okay, so the average of numbers from 1 to n is 1 plus 2 plus blah 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 plus n, and all of these divided by the number of elements, by the total number of whatever it is. Okay, so if we want to say we want to have the average of 1 plus 2 plus 3, it will be 1 plus 2 plus 3 divided by 3. Why 3? Because we have 3 numbers. Okay, so now we also know we also defined what average is. So any questions regarding the problem statement? Anything that is uncertain, anything that you'd like to clarify? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy paste this into our group.
The result should be object, right? With all classes.
Correct.
And
the result should be an object which looks something like this, as I've already shown. So it will be 4 here, like the second class would be, for example, 5, and the third class will be 2 up until all the classes. Okay, so that will be basically the result. You have 20 minutes to work on this project. On the task, let's put it this way, okay? This 20 minutes is not a hard kind of deadline because the deadline is tomorrow 10 a.m. We'll just spending 20 minutes on this task and then we'll move along to not just spend all our day, working on this issue. Let me maybe just zoom in a bit. Now, if you notice, we didn't do anything with the student name, and that will be your homework to do something with the student name too. So we do not care about the student name right now. We just need to have an object where the keys are classes and the values are the average grades for that class. You should be using reduce, but you can also use for loops, maps, whatever you like to solve this. So no restrictions whatsoever.
Can we see the output?
What output? Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. This is what you will get. Keys are classes and the values are average scores for that class. Չէ, արի չանենք, արի ես 20 բննատածում հեք, բոլորս։
Okay.
Այս 20 րոպե մենք ինչ-որ մտածում ենք, փորձում ենք լուծել, 2 րոպե հետո քննարկենք, ինքը ավտոմատ տնենք։ Ով որ այս 20 րոպե չվեց, այս ավտոմատ քննարկում տնենք, չէ՞ բավարար։
Վերցնեմ, որովհետև ոնց որ նշածներումս կարդում եմ fetching-ը երկու ձևով է կետով կամ քառակուսի bracket-ներով, բայց ոնց հասկանում եմ օբյեկտի վրայից գրամոյ դա չի լինում, օբյեկտի ամեն ոնց ասեմ, այդ մի հատ ձևավոր փակագծի միջինն է, որ accessible է, չէ՞, fetch-ը արվում կետով կամ քառակուսիով, բայց այդ օբյեկտի վրայից
Ինչ օբյեկտ գոյություն ունի, որ փորձենք դրանց ինչ-որ բան վերցնել։
Ուզում եմ ասեմ իմ խնդիրը է դա, որ ես այդ կետից չեմ կամ առաջ շարժվեմ, հասկանամ ոնց վերցնեմ օբյեկտի որևէ մի property, որ դա լինի արդեն ավելի
Okay. Հեսա բուկվալը 3 րոպեից որ հատ stop անենք, հատ ուրիշ array-ի վրա, array of objects-ի վրա, որպես օրինակ ցույց կտամ, թե ոնց կարելի է անցնել array-ի վրայով, այդ array-ի օբյեկտներից, էլեմենտներից, որոնք լինել են օբյեկտներ, շուտ property-ներ վերցնել։ Որ տնային անելուց արդեն իմանանք ոնց կարելի է դա վերցնել։
Okay.
Yes, բանացից։
Это гуманно. Давай.
Назում բան։
Давай. Two minutes.
I have just one question. After. Нет, зачем нор?
Այդ counter-ի բառը որ իմանաս, որ այս դասարանում ես այսքան աշակերտում եմ, որ այդ այսքան աշակերտը օգտագործելով այդ օբյեկտը, որ սարքել ես, որ գումարել ես իրար, այդ գումարը բաժանում ես այդ աշակերտի վրա։ Դες ինչ-որ մի ձև դու պետք է հասկանաս, որ այս դասարանում ես ունեմ 5 հատ աշակերտ, իրանց գումարը բաները score-ը ենթադրենք 20-ը, դե definition-ը 20-ը բաժանեցին 4-ով։
Հիմա դուրահամետ կարող ես նկարել։
Այս counter-ը որ դուրս է
Հա։
այդ անում անգամ ավելացնում է։
Բայց դասարանի հետ չես անում, դի global counter-ը դառնում։ Բայց դասարանի դեպի տարբերես։ Այս դասարանում ենք, ամեն դասարանում ենք անում։
Հաստատ թվերը հանել է։
Արի սենց անում։ Ես ես այն comment-ը կգրեմ,
Գտա։
I have solved this
Okay.
thing։ Այդտեղ դու բան կանես, հետի submit կանես։ I think whoever solved it, just save it in the JS video or Stack Blades and just send me the link, okay? We don't need the polling for the new ones.
Դիզայն։
Վերջապես գտած է այդ գտնելու կարիք չկա լինել։
Մի հարց կարամ տամ։
This. Okay, so
Փուշը սխալ եմ օգտագործել։
դե ինքը ասում է undefined-ի վրա չես կարա push կանչես,
Okay.
կակրա շատ լավ ասում է, սա բանից։ Okay, so you have this as a homework. Okay. Now please stop typing. We have only 25 minutes or so for me to also explain something new relative to objects. So I'll be doing that. Okay, so you have the problem statement. Just use whatever you need. No limitations whatsoever. You want to use for, use for. You want to use reduce, use reduce. Just give me the correct answer on this one. The deadline for this task would be tomorrow 10 a.m. You will also have 1 or 2 more homeworks, still relative to the same students array. So and the deadline of those also would be 10 a.m. tomorrow. All right.
Shows the result.
Sure. This is the result.
The average score in the class should be none, not an array.
Yes. So average score is a number by definition. So it's not an array. It's not a string. So it's a number. Yes. Average score is a number. Okay, so let me also put the problem statement in the Telegram. Calculate or construct an object from the given array students so that the keys of the object of that object are the classes in parentheses 1, 4, 5, whatever it is, up to 10 classes and the values and the values of that these are average scores of that given class. Average score is a number only. Okay, so I hope that word only will just do the trick. So we're looking to get a number, nothing else. This is your first homework. This was a task for day 5, but it as a homework. Deadline tomorrow or two more homeworks will fall. Okay. Լիլիջան ցույց տամ են array վրա որ պատտվում են օբյեկտի շորքի ենք վերցնում։
Ես հասկացա, որ ինդեքսով է, հիմա պետք է հասկանամ, այսինքն student index get, տենց բերում է score class իր student name-ը։ Հիմա պետք է շարունակություն հասկանամ, ոնց դրա վրայով պատտվեմ առանց for-ի օրինակ կամ for-ով պետք է պատտվեմ։ Ես մտածում էի map-ն էլ է ինքը for-ի պես պատտվելու տալու, բայց քան էլ չէ։ Մի խոսքով, չգիտեմ։
Այնքան էլ չէ, այսինքն այնքան էլ չէ։
Օրինակ, ուզում ասեմ, ես student character bracket եմ դնում, բնականա ինքը index-ա մեջի ուզում, որ այսինչ այսինչ student-ի class-ը ու score-ը ու student name-ը available լինի ինձ։ Դա ստացել եմ, բայց թե ոնց ասեմ այդ i-երորդինը բեր կամ բան, այդ դա չեմ պատկերացնում map-ով ոնց արվի, for-ով պատկերացնում եմ ոնց եմ անելու։
Լիլիջան են չիչիթը նայես։
Որ մեկը։
Որ երեք ուղարկել է array-ները։
Array-ներինը չեմ նայել։ Այդտեղ կերև, ահա։
Նայես, պետք է որ այդ բացել չլինի։
Սա, merci։
Այդ դոկ է չիչիթերը, դեպքում ձեռով ես ձեր համար հավաքում եմ, որ դուք չգնաք ժամերով դոկումենտացիա կարդաք, այլ այդ մեթոդը, որ ուզում եք արագ մի հատ վերիշել ոնց է աշխատում, պրոստը նկարը բացեք, համապատասխան մասը կարդաք, հասկանաք։ Եթե կարծում եք օգտակար չի կարամ այդ չիչիթը չանել։ Այդ դոկ, վիդեո, ես ես ինչ ուղարկում եմ, մինչև հաջորդ դասը աշխատեք նայել, խնդրում եմ։ Okay, ինչ ենք անում։ Array object-ների array, okay. Array objects of objects. So I'm going to simply show that, or we're going to discuss a small example where we have an array of objects, and the first object has a key called text. My imagination doesn't work anymore. And we have a key called value, so each one. And I'm going to kind of duplicate these a few times, okay? So text 1, text 0, text 2, text 3, or let's go the other way around, okay, to not confuse you. And 4, and the value is 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, I'm going to do this. Okay, so let's stop. I'll not discuss any new topics. So, well, we're going to do this two ways, okay? We'll do this one, option one or way one, we'll do this with a for loop. And we'll use two for loops. The other case would be, let's for example, try to do it with for each, right? So the task is to go through all the objects in this array and console log the values, the text and the value. Okay, so let's go for a for loop, a traditional, classic 1985 for loop, for example. So let index. We start from 0, as we know. Index is less than the length of the array, so our variable is array objects dot length. And then we increment our index, right? Okay. So again, the task is to get the object and log the keys, the values of the keys text and value. So element, I'm going to store my current kind of element in the array in a variable called element. It equals to array of object I. So yeah, of course you cannot find that because it's indexed. Now what we're going to do, we're just simply going to console log some stuff. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use some template strings here. And of course our element does have a text property as my IDE or text editor assists me here. So I'll say text is element value. Okay, so this is basically how you get the keys of your objects when you're iterating through an array. So let's save it. Text 1 is 1, text 2 is 2. Okay, so cool. Any other options to do this? There actually is. We can opt for not storing the current kind of object as a completely new variable, so we can just go for something like this. Okay, so we are kind of accessing our element at index and from our array of objects, and then we know that each object has the key text and value. So this works as intended. So we save, and we have the same result. So this would be the first option, and this would be the second option. Cool. So we know that we have another type of for loop, the for off loop. So let text value object of our array. So we are now directly iterating through our array, and we're just grabbing the values, right? And the elements, which in this case are objects. So we do this, and then I will just copy this line, put it here. We're not really interested in the index here, so I don't care about the index. So that's why the for off loop, and as you recall, the for in loop is not recommended to be used with arrays. So still the same thing. I can comment this out for you to see that kind of the terminal is being updated. So we log the same thing. Another way to do this. So this would be kind of third option. Let's console this. Let's comment it out. Let's go for the fourth option. Right. Option. So let's use the for each. Right. So it again receives a callback function, and the first element, as you can see, as my ID helps me out here, is the value or the element. It even shows that all my values have these text and value keys. So thanks to Visual Studio Code. I'll do element. This is Lilijan to answer your question about how to get elements in the map. So this is how you get it. You just specify, you just give this function to your for each, filter, reduce, map, and there are many other array methods. So you just give them a function, and the very first element in this function is your element. So that's how you get it. You don't have any, you can use indices here, but that just undermines the whole functionality of this method. So these methods are slightly different. They just give you the element, right? So in the classic for loop, you would have to kind of control the index and then access or object at that index to get your value. And in this case, with the for each loops, with the map method, whatever, it simply gives you your element. You don't have to do the index stuff here. So again, copy pasting the console log. Let's do this way, okay, to just kind of also differentiate the console logs. Yeah, so text value object is now element. Of course, this is the variable name. I can name it the way I wish, so I can just say text value object. And as you can see, it works. So again, this is how you access your stuff there. Now, fifth option. Fifth option, map. Same thing, okay, so same thing. However, in this case, map returns also an object. And in that case, in this case, we're simply kind of replacing all the values from our original object with undefined. Okay. Sixth option, why not? Sixth option. Dot filter. Now, do you see how these methods are similar to each other? I've used for each, I've used map, I've used filter, and all three of these kind of work the same way. We have the same exact function except for these 5, 4, 3. I mean, this part of the string, the console log, they work kind of very the same. Their semantics is very similar to each other. Of course, dot filter does something very different than map does or for each does, but they get the same type of function. You give them the same type of function. So visually they kind of look very similar, and that's intentional. So that you do not have to learn new ways to do stuff from for each to map and filter, right? So it's just for our convenience to learn that filter receives this type of function, and just to know that map for each, whatever other method it is, except for reduce, they also receive very similar functions. So that's the sixth option. Let's go for the seventh option. Why not? And I'll use the reduce. Now I'm just using a more powerful tool to do something that could be done with a for loop or with a for each loop. However, I'm simply showing that you can do this. So what we're going to do is we have our accumulator, and then in the reduce function, our current kind of element is the second option, because reduce works slightly differently. It's more powerful, so it kind of looks slightly differently. And we have to return the accumulator. And what I can do is I can just do the console log. And that would be our seventh option. Okay. And by the way, that was just a demonstration. If you do not specify the initial value to the reduce, your accumulator will be the first element in your array. That is why when we log the current or next element, that's why we don't have the text one is text one, because this accumulator is the variable that holds that first option, as you can see here. Okay. That's why I switched to a default value here. And in this case, if you specify the default value, accumulator holds that default value and starts iterating from the very first element in your array. And that's why now you see text one is one, text two is two.
It's override.
On my intro, so this
ACC text making ACC get text. This one has kind of one standard of text value object. Hamil model ACC ham model çok ACC kin havasları text value object. Net ham model çünkü havasları nor eraser ki uktimeçe et havasları mihatlar etbuhatı mihatlar.
That's what you must do.
Classları mi kani hatın için nüyn class'ı. Esmek task.
Это glass volume, да, то есть? Окей.
Механи хаты. I want filtrane, mechani hаты. For class food, ускорить авелацию. Я скоро.
Можно с этим делиться? Okay.
Tipo, veli von stare iterate lo scanner.
Value one.
Anhu istersen. Çok az kaldı.
Эти практика է գալու։
Հա։
Բայց դուք ուզում եք ես
Ասա,
տեղում խնդիրը ձեր համար լուծեմ, ինչ կողմը չի։
Benim
Նորեթի անեմ խնդրի մի մասը արդեն
Դա
լուծված։
դրա նման խնդիր ամեն։
Μην լուծեք մի քիչ տանջվենք։
Արանք ուրիշ խնդիր անենք մենք այդ։
Այդ խնդիրը ես պիտի ձեր համար մտածեմ։ Որ անեք ուրիշ խնդիր։ Կամը հեշտ է ասել ուրիշ խնդիր։
Çocuklarınız bana şeyin görmedi.
Ինչի։
Value one text blah blah. Okay. So whatever. it is.
Graden, taking vre.
Now 2, 1 and 3. Blah blah 1, blah blah 2, blah blah 3, blah blah 4.
Prošlim berek kest vas votis manana.
Okay, so let's side of that column is okay.
Uzundur.
Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get an object which looks something like this. The keys of these objects will be the values of these keys, right? So it will be value. And the value of that key will be the text. Does that make sense? So let's construct the object itself. Okay, so we will have 1. What will be the value of 1? I am going through, I didn't finish with the statement. I'm going through the array. I will have each object now have the values, and you can see we have 2 values. We have 2 identical values, 1 and 1. However, their text is different. So when I go through the whole array, what will be the value here?
Global 1 and global 3.
I did not say I'm going to get all the values. I said I'm going to get
Blah, blah,
Sorry.
blah blah what?
the last one.
Why?
Because it overrides.
Nice, because it overrides. That's correct. Because for the first iteration, my accumulator will look something like this. 1 blah blah 1. For the second iteration, my object will be 1 blah blah 2. However, for the third iteration, we have the same key here. So this value 1 maps to the key here. And since we're not kind of collecting all the values in an array, we're just kind of, we're just keeping the latest value. That's why we will have this overwritten, and the resulting object would be 3 blah blah 4. Does this make sense? We're not keeping all the values. Okay, we've already done that. So okay, so let me return my accumulator first. Now what I should do here is now I'm trying to now my keys in my accumulator will be the values here. So and my values, my current objects come in the variable current value. So I'll grab my current value. Of course, I have both text and value. So my values here are the keys in my object, hence accumulator square brackets current element dot value, and they equal to current elements text. Yeah, let me just const. Okay, so I'll assign a variable const reduce result. And let me comment this out because we have. Now, does this make sense? Did we get the same object that we anticipated we should get? As we can see, the value of 1 is overwritten, which is correct. 2 is blah blah 2, and 3 is blah blah 4. So we get exactly what we want. Does this part look similar to you? So any other questions?
And is there a way to say to reduce function not to overwrite but sum up? Or this is something we
What
should
do you
arrange?
mean to sum up? How do you sum up strings in this case?
If it is
Calculate
not
string?
string, but number. If it is not string,
Pardon?
can it be taken like a number, not string? I mean, if it is number but not string.
Of course we can. So
Or if it is string, concatenate the strings. Is it possible with reduce or?
of course, that's the whole purpose of reduce that you can do stuff like that.
Okay, great
Um,
then.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, we can do that, of course, if you would like, no problem. So now what we need to do, you have already done this, some of you who solved the homework or the or yesterday's that writers and authors, so you have done something very similar. So let's think out loud about the problem, okay? So what we need to do is when we occur the same value, we need to concatenate the words. Okay, so when we try to concatenate the current text with something that's not defined, that would be an incorrect value. So maybe I'm trying to think about the algorithm, okay, before I jump into solution. I know how to solve it. Of course, I can type the solution right now, but just so you kind of understand how the thinking works. So you just think about the problem first, okay? So if we occur this key 1, so let's say it's the first iteration. Now our value is 1. Maybe we should check in the object if we already have a key which has a string value and then concatenate, that actually makes sense. Otherwise, we would have some kind of messed up values. So so let's go for the first option, which is checking if the key is not in the object. And we can simply do that by checking the value of that key, right? So this accumulator square brackets current element value would just try to grab this value in the object. If it is not defined, if we get an undefined or something else, that means we will first need to create that key. Okay, so we would need this part. It equals to current element dot text. Otherwise, if it exists, okay, otherwise we'll already have the key. Now what we can do here, we can just say, just grab these two values and concatenate them together. Okay, so instead of kind of creating that key, just grab these two values and concatenate them together. So as you can see, the option, the key 1, and we have two values for the key 1 is blah blah 1 and blah blah 3, because we occur the first option first because it's the first element in the array. That's why we have blah blah first, and then blah blah 3 is concatenated to that string. So if we would go for maybe something like this, so I'll add another key with the value 2. So we will have 1 blah blah 1 blah blah 3. For the second one, we'll have blah blah 2 blah blah 5, and the third one stays as it is. So anyways, again, if you have a problem at hand, just think about the problem, think out loud, or write it on the paper, and then start coding stuff, because that will be much easier. That way is much easier to solve problems. Okay, so let me, just for your reference, let me copy paste this into Telegram.
Arsencan, I have solved the problem. Can you, I'll upload it to, to Stack Blitz. Can you please look through it?
Did you already send me the message?
No, I will do it in a moment.
Okay, so when I receive the message, I'll see that I received the message and I'll go through your solution. If that makes sense.
Yes, it makes. Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, so that's about that. So this we basically just reviewed lots of stuff. We did some examples with reduced today. Didn't learn anything new, and that's unfortunate for you because I'll be condensing the upcoming classes so that you learn about this. So my recommendation is to read learning materials. You can watch whatever tutorials, articles, you can do anything you want. Just one ask. The only ask is do not use this real-time coding assistance, Copilot. There are the other products like this. Just do not use them. I need you to learn these building blocks, okay? If Copilot suggests a 50-line code and you do not understand how it works, it will be virtually useless for you. It might even have some kind of bugs in there. It might have something you have to adjust. If you don't understand how that code works, Copilot is no help for you. So do not use Copilot for these classes.